Hello and welcome to the short Vort on Parshas Beshalach from Revii to Chamishi. This week it's a special Parsha. It's not just Shabbos Shira, but it is also Tu B'Shvat on the same day. And from Revii to Chamishi we have the Shira itself as part of the Parsha. And it says that what the Shvachos, the maidservants of the Jews saw on the Yam Suf was greater than what Yechezkel HaNavi saw. Yet in the end, Yechezkel was who he was, and the Shvachos remained Shvachos and were not elevated by what they saw. Something to think about. When we see something special, we got to learn the lessons and grow. But back to the main feature of the Parsha. So in Perek Tezvav, Pasuk Ches, it says, "V'ruach apecha nemru mayim nitzu k'mod neidin dozulim, kafu tamos b'lev yam." We say it every morning in Shira. At a blast from your nostrils, the waters were heaped up. Straight as a wall stood the running water, the deep waters congealed in the heart of the sea. So Rashi says about the water that Nermu, that when it was heaped, that he brings down Onkelos, who says, Chakimu Maya Lashanar Mimus. The water was wise, and they would use a certain trick. He used a certain trick to kill the Egyptians and get them to come into the water and then collapse on them. So the Medrash says that they'd also had an armimus, this wisdom to say Shira, that it sang a song of praise to Hashem. And the Mechilta says, in response to when the Egyptians want to say Havan Chak Malo, the water eventually used its armimus and was lochem with them. It was fighting with them. So we see the water had a certain wisdom, a certain cunning, that it did battle, and it said Shira. So this is something amazing. Like, where do you get wisdom by water? It's an inanimate object, and this is a question of the Haderes Zakanan, and this Dvar Torah is going to be based on Rav Shimon Schwab's Maayan Beis Hashaovah on the Parsha. So we find in several different ways that the water was showing Bechira, that it was showing that it had a choice. When Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to split the sea, it objected. It said, "No, I don't want to do that. Why should I listen to you?" But Hashem intervened, and therefore the water ended up splitting. And we also found that in response to the Bnei Yisrael's actions in Avodah Zarah, Hamayim Lehem Choma, so it was also objecting to them. So there's surely no wisdom in an inanimate object, not even in the other types of non-human categories, whether it's someach, like something that grows, such as the grass, or chai, like an animal. They don't have a das like a human. But there are certain times, at times of miracles, where they will get something that at least looks like the image, the tzura, of wisdom. And we find several different examples for this. We find one example, this is by Makas Bachoras, Lo Yechratz Kelev L'shono. The dogs didn't bark, and for that they were rewarded, that they were given the tray for meat to eat. But why should they be rewarded if they don't have bechira, if they don't have choice? They're just doing what they were instructed to do. Why should they be rewarded? So the answer is, at the time of the miracle of Makas Bachoros, they had some type of choice, and therefore they do have to get rewarded. Another example is Hananya, Mishael, Azariah. They decided to let themselves be thrown into the Kivshan Ha'esh, the fiery oven, because they saw the example that Tzafardea, during the Makkah, the frogs went into the ovens themselves. Now, if they didn't have free choice, then what lesson can we learn? They were doing what they had to do. So the answer is, during this miracle of Makkah Tzafardea, they had a choice. And there's other examples for regarding the donkey of Bilam and how we reproached him, also during the time of the miracle. So how are we supposed to understand this? So the root, Rav Schwab says, is that the time of Masa Bereshis, the world was actually created where there was a stage where these inanimate and animate objects did have a certain das to them. That's why in Shabbos we say Yitzaram b'das v'vinu v'askel, because they were created with this knowledge and intellect, and that's how come we also see at Maayan Beis Hashaovah we had different stories about a dialogue between the sun and the moon, where the moon was complaining, how could there be two giant lights, which are called malachim, to be in the sky at once. So at that point there was certain intellect, and also there was a certain bechira. And also you have the case of the ground. The ground was supposed to make trees, that the tree itself tasted like the fruit, but it didn't listen. It made a choice and did not create trees that tasted like the fruit themselves. Again, an example of bechira by these inanimate objects. But this is before the period where once Hashem was made Shabbos, that he rested and he set the world into its natural teva, they lost that initial chachma, with the exception of at a time of a miracle, that when a time of a miracle comes, they can have bechira again. So therefore we have by the water, by the dogs, and by the frogs. They all, during a special miracle period of Nisan, they had the power again. So, we have a bechira all the time, and we have to use it to make the right choices and the right decisions. And maybe we'll be zocheh to do so. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day, and have a wonderful Shabbos. Enjoy your Shabbos Shira, and